Welcome to Behind the Bet with sportsbet.io. My name is Gavin from Clubhouse TV and I will be asking your questions to our guests today. Now, I am wearing an Arsenal shirt because our guest is a true Arsenal legend, holding the record for the most appearances in a Gunner shirt, 722 of them in an 18-year career at Highbury. I'm also at the home of Leeds United, Ellen Road, where our guest made his name as a manager, leading Leeds to their highest ever finish in the Premier League and taking them to a UEFA Cup semi-final and a Champions League semi-final as well. Welcome to Behind the Bet at sportsbet.io, David O'Leary. And here we are live from the home of Clubhouse TV with sportsbet.io for another special edition of Behind the Bet. My name's Gav, of course, and I'll be asking your questions to the guest who sits alongside me right now. Please welcome to Behind the Bet, sportsbet.io, David O'Leary. There he is. Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
That's always the first question that I ask as well, which is always the most important, which is, how are you? That's always the most important question. How are you? Are you well?
I'm well, above ground, and looking forward to this hour.
Good. If you could just nudge a little bit closer to the microphone, sure. That'd be great. Thank you. So the way that this is going to work, I'm going to ask you questions from sportsbet.io customers. I don't know what's being asked. This will go anywhere. Where the show goes, nobody knows, as we say. All right, so no doubt about it, we're going to be covering your career at Arsenal, covering your career for the Republic of Ireland, of course, Leeds United, Aston Villa may get a mention as well, you as a person. I'm going to start asking a couple of questions. Everybody who gets a question asked, by the way, to David will win a 10 USDT free bet, which will be in your account within 48 hours as well. We're going to be playing David's picks later on as a charity donation as well. But having done research and studied nothing but you for the last 48 hours, the one thing I noticed in your playing days is how many games you were involved in that had extremely late drama in them. Extremely late drama. Now, the first one that people think of, and this will be covered, so I don't think we'll cover it now, is, of course, Anfield.
Yeah.
The 2-0 win.
And that's the one I'd probably think of.
That's the one you think of. But your final game for Arsenal, 1993 FA Cup, Andy Linnigan, broken nose header, wins it against Sheffield Wednesday in the 119th minute.
When you think back, you forget about that. And
yeah.
The thing probably I remember about that game was, for all it was a brilliant thing. It's always a brilliant thing to win the FA Cup, but I knew it was my last game for Arsenal, and it was a mixed joys. When I've been used to and lucky to go up at Wembley and pick the FA Cup up, when you walk down with it and walk around after winning, it's fantastic. But I knew at the end of that lap of Wembley and we went down the tunnel that when I took the shirt off in the dressing room, it'd be my last time I'd take a shirt off for Arsenal Football Club.
How did that make you feel?
It was a mixed emotions that night at Wembley, because I've walked around Wembley after losing cup finals and it's the most unpleasant walk you can have. But to walk around winning a cup final, to come down the steps with the trophy and walk around and see your fans is absolutely an unbelievable thing. But that night, there was sadness walking around, waving to those great Arsenal fans who were brilliant to me over all those years. And to go into the dressing room and kind of take that jersey off, everybody's celebrating. And yeah, you're celebrating, but you knew then, I remember looking at the shirt and said, I'll never be putting another Arsenal shirt on then. But if somebody had said to me, it was exactly 20 years, it was 93, I came to the club in 73, and if somebody said to me, a lad from Dublin, would be there 20 years later and his last game would be winning the FA Cup final.
Well, exactly.
Couldn't complain.
What a way to bow out that is. It wasn't just the FA Cup and the late drama, of course, because that was the FA Cup replay as well, because you played Sheffield Wednesday, I think it was 3 times. You played him in the League Cup final as well, the month before at Wembley. So did you know, I only found this out the other day as well. That's 1993 when Arsenal won the League Cup and also the FA Cup. That Arsenal were the first side to win both competitions. They were the first time. And
it was a great month, really.
Yes.
It was strange that we had to play Sheffield Wednesday again. I liked Trevor Francis, and I shook his hand. He was very kind to come up and say congratulations, David. But then he had to come up and say congratulations again the second time. So it was a kind of a miserable month for him. But to say at the end of your career at Arsenal that you won those 2 cups and you won them in the same year was great.
Do you want a random fact about the 1993 League Cup final? Do you know what was different about that League Cup final? And it's something that happens in football every day and we don't think about it now, but that game was the first. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
The 1993 League Cup final was the first ever game in which a European team had the squad numbers on the back and your names on the back. Did you know that?
No. Never heard it even mentioned.
That is it. That is the first ever game where you actually had
your name
O'Leary on the back of your shirt.
No. And honestly, I haven't heard that brought up in conversation or anything else.
There you go, you see.
So that'll make a nice little quiz thing.
Have you got that shirt anywhere?
I have the shirt, yeah.
Well, there you
I
are.
have the shirt.
It's
Thank
the
you.
first one with O'Leary on the back.
I have the shirt.
And there's also the 1979 FA Cup final, which is called the 5-minute final, because Arsenal were in control, 2-0 up, and then with 5 minutes left to play, Liverpool hit twice. The second goal is where you get turned, and they equalise.
Man United, to correct you. Man United.
Sorry, it was Man United, yes.
Do you know that final was... We'd got beaten by Ipswich the season before, and we were hot favourites, and we blew it. Probably the only good thing getting beaten by Ipswich was only 1-0, because Ipswich should have beaten us by more. But we were lucky enough, we played well enough, and we got back the following year, and we learned so much about our preparation and everything about what went on the year before. We were so determined to put it right and be lucky enough to have the opportunity to put it right. It was a big clash, North v South, Man United v Arsenal, couldn't get bigger and better. Sunny day, and we didn't read papers, didn't listen to all the talk about how good we were or what we were going to do. We just, within ourselves, went out there and said we were going to win this. We're lucky. We know what it's like to lose. We want to walk off this pitch winning, celebrating. Went out, took control of the game, 2 goals up, came out the second half and kind of decided to sit on it, invited trouble, and we certainly invited trouble. And in the end, just on 5 minutes to go, Manchester United equalised.
McQueen scores after 86. McIlroy scores after 88. Do you remember the McIlroy goal?
Well, I do, because I was partly, when I look back, thinking I should have done a lot better than I did. And
he turned you and scored in the far corner. Didn't he?
And hadn't got time to think about it. The only thing, we went back to the halfway line and thinking, oh, God, we've blown this. This is going to go into extra time. But you really didn't have much time to think, because as soon as we kick off, we go down the other end and score.
Yeah, cross in, back post.
The thing I remember,
Sunderland scores.
Great ball from Liam Brady. Liam Brady wins it. Great run. Puts a ball that Graham Ricks just has to run onto.
Yeah.
And Graham clipped a great ball in and left Gary Bailey in no man's kind of land. It was the ball that goalkeepers hate. Alan Sunderland there. Fantastic. Happy days. It was like, got out of jail here, But now, by getting out of jail, let's not blow this now. Make sure we see this out and win the game, which we did.
So you kind of started I know that was, you kind of made your debut for Arsenal a couple of seasons, a season before that, but kind of 79 FA Cup final, late drama at Wembley, 1993 your final game, late drama at Wembley. I mean, as I said in the start of, and I've studied what you've done on even as a manager, some Leeds games, such late drama as well. So, honestly.
I mean, Wembley was, growing up in Ireland, you watched the FA Cup final. It was the thing, and to say a lad from Dublin then comes over and gets so lucky to play in so many of them, and to play at Wembley was brilliant. And the FA Cup final for a player is a great occasion.
Yeah. So what we're going to do now is we're going to turn to the questions from sportsbet.io customers. As I said, where the show goes, nobody knows. These questions will be very random. They'll cover a range of topics as well. No doubt there'll be something in there about the World Cup and also Anfield as well at the 2-0 victory. So it's time to ask David. So every single person who gets a question asked to David O'Leary, the very special guest on Behind the Bet here at sportsbet.io, will win a 10 USDT free bet. So are you ready, by the way? Are you ready and braced?
I am.
You sure?
Let's go.
Okay, let's go. Question number 1. Here we go. Question from Pumar. David broke a record in the history of Arsenal by playing 722 matches for the Gunners. Do you think there will be another player who can break this record for Arsenal or for any football club?
Thanks for the question. Thanks for taking interest and being kind enough to ask me a question. I don't think anybody will break my record. Would I like somebody to break it? Yes, because I know then if they do, Arsenal would benefit because he'll have been an absolute great player and a great servant. But the way squads are now and the way people are rested, and in those days there's one sub, small squad, you had to play. There was no such thing as about being tired. 60 games a season was no big deal. So on those bases, I don't think anybody will break my record. Do I think for other clubs? No, I don't think so either, because I think the way people move around now, I don't think people will stay there. We're talking about, say, even managers like the Wengers and Alex Ferguson will be people like that to stay at clubs for so long. No, and I don't think going forward there'll be somebody to stay at a club like myself for 20 years.
It's not just the fact that you stayed at Arsenal for 18 years, it's the fact that you were an ever-present. So you made your debut for Arsenal aged 17. Do you remember the game?
Burnley away.
Okay.
I remember coming back as my third season. I was just turned 17, and Bertie Mee picked up a few injuries, and Bertie Mee said to me, "You're going to play in the first game of Burnley." The memories of that game were, can't believe it, 17 years of age.
17.
That I'd play. I played in it. Great memory afterwards. I lost my dad a few years back, and I remember Arsenal, typical Arsenal, like class. My dad came into the dressing room after the game. I didn't know he'd come to the game to watch. They flew him over, watched the debut, so that was absolutely brilliant. Then Bertie Mee said to me, "Are you okay?" On the Monday, and I said, "Yeah, I feel okay." Then you're going to play against, I think, Sheffield United during that week. And he kept asking me this. I think there was 42 games that season. I think I played in about 40 of them.
Yeah,
all in.
But this is the thing. Over the course of the next 10 seasons, bearing in mind you made your debut age 17, what you would do now in football is you play someone age 17, play a few games, drop them, look after them, bring them back in, you feed them in. Where you were in and you stayed in, and for the next 10 seasons, you played over 40 games per season in 9 of those 10 seasons. It was only the 80-81 season where you only played around 27 because of injury. So you were literally in and you stayed in for 10 years. That's phenomenal, isn't it?
I probably didn't think about it that way. The way it was great, and I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the pressure. Was Arsenal were a club that if you weren't doing the business, there was always somebody coming in to take your place.
Yes.
You know, so that kept you on your toes, and I enjoyed that pressure. I've seen many good players come to Arsenal from other clubs who couldn't cope with that pressure, that demand of having to perform, having to play. But I enjoyed that. I was probably brought up in that environment with Arsenal, and so when you were brought through the ranks, you knew what to expect. I think the other thing was I was lucky with injuries. I was always fit. I could run, and I had no weight problems. And as well as that, there was plenty of days I'd wake up and I had a flu or a niggly injury, but I knew I had to get on with it. And if you want to achieve those records, times you've got to play if you're picked when you're not fully right.
And if anybody can spot talent, young talent, is Bertie Mee, because Bertie Mee, of course, is the guy who helped discover John Barnes and brought him in at Watford. So if anybody can spot talent, Bertie Mee can. Right, question number 2. Thank you, Puma, also winning a 10 USDT free bet. Question from Lolo Jones. How did you feel about reaching the semi-finals with Leeds United? This is UEFA Cup and Champions League as well. And what do you think the reason is that Leeds lost in both, aside from your opponent scored more than you? I mean,
in both the semi-finals, the best team won. Sadly, I think the Europa Cup was unfair in a way that we played a Champions League side who had dropped into it halfway through. I've always been a belief that if you start in the Europa Cup, the teams that start there is the ones should finish it. You shouldn't get people that halfway through a competition drop in.
This is talking about Galatasaray.
Galatasaray.
Yeah.
I think even still, you know, Galatasaray had been in the Champions League. They've got enough matches there. But then they come in and they progress through and we get them in the semi-final. And over the 2 legs, I don't think we played particularly well in Istanbul. And we just couldn't bring the deficit back in the second leg, and we were beaten. The other game was Valencia, who on the day away, again proved a better team. I think they'd more experienced players, and the players we had, the young lads, I think they just ran out of a little bit of steam towards the end of that season. Been a long campaign in Europe. They've done unbelievable to get to where they did. We'd have loved to get to the final, but we just came up short.
What's your abiding memory of your Champions League run? I guess there's many there, but I mean, was it facing Real Madrid home and away? What was your abiding memory?
There were so many. There was so many. There was, you know, sitting on the pitch, looking at the fans in Milan after we, you know, the game where all the fans were singing to us and we were trying to join in with them, and going, you know, to Rome, you know, Real Madrid. They were just phenomenal nights. The Deportivo La Coruña stands out for me at home in the quarterfinal of, I think, the Champions League, where we beat them 3-0, and they were a really exceptional side. And I just thought Ellen Road was always buzzing. We had a great backing, but that night we just clicked everything. You couldn't say any player didn't play well. Everybody played at the top of the game, and we were just a revelation on the night, really.
As a golfer will say that out of 70 plus shots they hit, there's probably 2 or 3 that are perfect. In terms of a manager and their team performances, how many would you say that was one where everything went to plan? Was that one of those nights where everything just went to plan and everybody did their job? And
if I was being interviewed afterwards and said, tell me who played well, I'd have to say, I'm sorry, everybody played well. Just everybody. You hope, you know, maybe 7 players really play well and you can carry the rest or whatever. But that night, the Ellen Road was buzzing. There was a great atmosphere in the ground. We were playing a top team. The players knew that. But we absolutely, from the start of the game to the end of the game, we just played fantastically well.
Was there a moment where you kind of had to pinch yourself that this is what you were doing? Bearing in mind this is your first job at Leeds, and literally within 2 years you've gone from not being a manager to suddenly fighting out in the latter stages of some big European competitions. Did you ever pinch yourself, or was it just keep your head down and focus on the next game?
No, I did pinch yourself and knew you were so lucky, and so your first job was managing a great club like Leeds United, a big club, a famous club, and to be given that opportunity. And as you went in, as you progressed after a few months to more months and more months, you knew you had these great fans and you didn't want to let them down. And the more you did well, the more you felt pressure in yourself to take them further and further, because we'd see on European nights away from home, the brilliant fans that came with us, that we wanted to give them more of that. So, you know, it was just brilliant. Great memories.
Yeah, thank you. Another question for David O'Leary, Behind the Bet with sportsbet.io. Question from Navidard. In your football journey to become the best, there you are.
Thank you.
Which player influenced you the most?
Which player?
That's a very good question.
I don't think there's which player. I played with a growing up, a great group of professionals who shaped me, like Pat Rice. Yeah. You know, you had people like, say, Pat Jennings in goal. There was lads like Sammy Nelson, mightn't be household names. Liam Brady was a few years ahead of me. Frank Stapleton.
Yeah. Alan Ball,
you know.
Brian Kidd. I mean, there
was a person called George Armstrong there.
Yeah, well, because he, up until that point, when you first signed for Arsenal, George Armstrong actually went on to become the record appearance holder for Arsenal. Yeah. But if someone had said to you when you were sharing the dressing room with him at the age of 17 that you're going to go and break his record, he'd have gone, no, give over.
No, and I remember when I did break the record, George had kind of left the club but got in touch and congratulated me on it. And you know, it was brilliant. But I had really good professional. I had, with the Irish international team there, you know, a great player, a Leeds United player, Johnny Giles.
Yeah.
So you know, you had that. I remember even a lad at the very start of my career, played my first game. He came to Arsenal at the end of his career and he couldn't believe he was playing Arsenal. A man called Terry Mancini, I played in that first few games with him, and he was amazing person, a great help. So I had a great deal of. I was a lucky young player to have great professionals around me.
Watching when you first joined Arsenal and watching loads of Arsenal videos, Just how good was Liam Brady?
Liam Brady was a great player. It's easy to say great player.
Yeah.
I was with him yesterday, and we were telling things. And I told him, I remember, honestly, I said to him yesterday, we were at the Emirates Stadium doing something. I said, Liam, it was a pleasure to play with a great player like yourself. And that's what he was. And I was lucky then to be able to go and play international football with him.
Yeah.
And when you talk about, great players you play with, I'd probably say the two midfield players, if I was picking my team, I'd be lucky, it'd be Brady and Roy Keane. I think myself, they'd be a good double act, in front of you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Another question for David O'Leary on Ask David. Here we go. Question from Chi. Apart from football, what other career could you have chosen? It's that question, isn't it? If you weren't a footballer,
No.
what would you have been?
I grew up around near Dublin Airport. That way, I was always fascinated in planes, and I always thought if you didn't make it be a footballer, you could maybe be a long haul, pilot. Whether they've had the brains or the technical ability to do that, but at school, you'd watch. It was football. You'd finish school, football. I had a brother, my dad. Everybody were all sports. My dad couldn't kick a ball to save his life, but he took us everywhere to play football.
Really?
And he'd take us. I had an uncle, the same thing. He'd take us to watch matches and take us then to play from, say, under 11, under 12, under 13 stuff. And all my life was about growing up was about football. My sister must have drove her mad that my brother and myself, and all we talked about was football in the house.
Because the thing is, even if you break into football age 19 or 20 or even 21, you're still relatively young. But at the age of 17, I guess you didn't have the choice of anything else because you literally were a professional footballer age 17. So
I was spotted by Arsenal. You play under 15 international.
You had a trial at Manchester United, didn't you?
Went to Manchester United. There was an old player there called Shea Brennan, who sent me over, recommended me. Frank O'Farrell was the manager at the time then, way back. I remember being at the cliff and all these people were outside the train. Never seen that like it's even when I went on football, and they're all waiting for George Best to arrive in. It was like a Beatle, and he came in this yellow E-type Jag, and I'm not 15 at the time, I'm just 14 and 3/4, and I'm over, and that was my memory of George Best coming in, getting out of his car. And I was thinking, I'm not far from George Best here. I didn't meet him that trip or that, and met him after that at times and told him this story, but I've never seen so many people outside the training ground. And all the years afterwards, I got into football, and he was there, And I remember being taken to a game. Then I can't remember what game United took us to. I was with a bunch of other young lads, and we watched him play that day, and he was absolutely, brilliant. But I went to Arsenal after that. I just liked the feel of Arsenal. I thought to myself, if you're good enough, they'll give you a chance here.
Yeah.
It seemed to be a better structure at the time, and went down there, and lucky enough they asked me to sign. And I came back in early July. I was gone 15 and I could sign at 15. Left home very homesick. And first year struggled with the expectation, the harder training. Didn't think it was much good. Thought I'd be sent home at the end of the year, and I felt very homesick for that first year in London. Arsenal looked after me unbelievably well, and kind of started to click after that first year. Towards the end of it, came back the following year. Thought, God, the aim was then to get into the reserve team, and I did get in at the very start, and had a year in the reserve team, and came back the following year thinking, you don't know what. Wasn't expecting to be 6 weeks later, end of pre-season, to say you're going to make your debut. I was hoping maybe you'd get a game or something if you did well the third year at the end of the season. But Bertie Mead coming up to me earlier in that week and said, look, we're going to play against Burnley on the Saturday. And I couldn't, and all the senior players from Alan Ball to, Terry Mancini to Pat Rice, Sammy Nelson, Jimmy Rimmer and goal and all that, they all made you feel like you deserved to be there, even though it was because there was injuries and that's how lucky I got to get in.
How I don't know if you ever did feel this way, but was there a point of where you felt you belonged at that age, or was it constantly every single game you have to play your best to prove yourself to stay in that side?
Good question. I kept being asked. Bertie Mee said to me after that game during that week, "Are you feeling okay?" And I says, "Yeah." Can you play midweek? I says, "Yeah, I feel fine." Bertie Mee took care of me after a match. Say the Tuesday night, I think it was Sheffield United at that.
You beat Sheffield United as well in your second game, yeah. Well, as you know, I'm a Sheffield United fan, so that's.
I didn't want to bring that up in that way.
I did it for you.
But it was a great night there at Sheffield United, and then he said to me on the Thursday, "You've played 2 games now. How are you feeling?" I said, "I feel okay." And he was checking all the time on me, and that one I said, "Feel all right." And I kept that question seemed to keep coming, and I honestly, as we went on and went on and went on, I was thinking, I'm fine. If you think I'm good enough to play, I feel I can. And I had good people around me to help me.
Brilliant. Great. Thank you. Another question for David O'Leary. Question from I'm going to say Mr. T-Dog, if that's okay. What position would you like to play if you weren't a defender?
That's a good question. That way, I'd have liked it to be a player that links it up, between the centre forward and maybe like a Dennis Bergkamp type of.
He's just my favourite footballer.
Not the out of centre, not the up there centre forward, the one that
just loiters behind.
Yeah,
it's what I call the string puller.
And yes, that way, without a doubt, that's what I think I might have liked to be.
To follow on from Mr. T-Dog's question. Which player, if you could have been any player in that position, who would you have been? Would it have been a Dennis Bergkamp? If you could come back as Dennis Bergkamp, would you have done so?
The player I really liked and thought he was absolutely brilliant was Marco van Basten. Oh. So I think I'd have been like to be Marco van Basten.
Who you almost faced at the World Cup in 1990. Yeah, that's almost, because you were on the bench as an unused sub. Yeah. But what was it like to see him play? What is it like when you idolise a player and you really like a player, and then there you are with them playing in front of you? What's that like?
Well, you had growing up. I used to, idolise people like Franz Beckenbauer, for kind of playing at the back and thinking to try and play his style and pass the ball around and that. Met him, and then you met Marco van Basten. We had to play Milan, and. Then you're meeting these people and you're speaking to them and they're speaking to you ordinarily. I remember doing the dressing room at Arsenal. I was on the away dressing room in my first year there, and teams would come and you'd go in afterwards, and you'd have to wait until all of them went. I remember Barcelona came over, and I thought everybody had left, and went in to get the dressing room all hosed down and cleaned up so I could get on my way and all this. Who was sitting in the corner still? Johan Cruyff. And I went, Johan Cruyff? Oh my God. I get it, I started to get back out. I thought, sorry. He went, here, come here. And he said, what do you do here? I said, I'm a young apprentice, and the first year the apprentice, you get you the clean dressing room, the home one, but I'm on the away one. He started talking to me. And I went, Johan Cruyff? And he kept talking, as I say, and I'm thinking, I keep saying to me, Johan Cruyff is talking to me. And lo and behold, then I played down in Barcelona in that a few years, and he said to me, you're the lad in the dressing room in that way. And I said, yeah. And from that then, I'd meet him. I remember meeting him at the Dunhill Golf, up there. And he's kind of saying, you didn't do badly washing dressing rooms out, all that stuff. And it was amazing. I was thinking, and in those days, I remember coming back that night, and I couldn't wait to ring. I had to go to a phone box to ring home, the following day. And I said to my dad, I spoke to Johan. Johan Cruyff spoke to me, and my dad said, "Son, you imagine things." I said he did in that way. So that was. Out of all the ones I met, probably that one was the one that, going forward, of thinking, how I met Johan Cruyff and how he remembered it.
Because you couldn't whip out the phone and take a selfie, could you? Literally, it's
There was
just
none of
your
those.
word
There was
for
none
it.
of those
Yeah,
things.
exactly.
And when we say about great player, he was now great player.
Yeah. You always know when a great player when he's got an actual move in football named after him, like the Cruyff turn. That's when you've made it. Really, really made it. Right, thank you. Another question for David O'Leary. Where the show goes, nobody knows. So what we've got from genetics. If you could play again, here we go. If you could play again, David, which era of football would you play in now, or the era that you played in?
I'd like to play in the era now, and I'd love to play with the. We talked about a player like Liam Brady. Say he, and the George Best and all, they had themselves kicked lumps out of, and they still had to play. And those players now, where the game is so good, is that has been stamped out, and the great players, the players with ability, are allowed play. The only probably negative thing is players go down to, quickly now. They roll over for nothing. It's farcical the way they act now. And I'd like to play in that era. I'd like to play in the era now because the pitches everywhere. Pitches are unbelievable to play on.
Well, I was about to mention that you look at some pictures from the 70s, the pictures of pictures from the 70s and the 80s, and the only bit of grass is the corner flags.
Unbelievable. I remember going...
And the rest of it is like Glastonbury.
I remember running out of the baseball ground, and it was like a mud heap, of that way. And the pitches were just, and these, we had to play on them. We had to try and pass the ball and play in it. So I think that stage, I'd love to be on it now, where the pitches from the first game of the season to the last game of the season, you wouldn't know that brilliant and perfect. And I think the way I played and the way I like to play, and a lot of these, the players like I mentioned, they would flourish in this day and age. So this era, I'd like to play.
Okay, a follow-up question to that then. You can play for one Premier League team right now. Which team, which manager?
Which manager? I'd probably... look, I'd like to play for Arsenal in the story in that way. But
under Arteta?
I don't know Arteta in that way, but he's doing a great job.
He's doing a fantastic job.
He's doing a great job. I've met him a few times without knowing the man, but I think it's a great time for Arsenal. They've given him time, space to bring a young team along, which are great. I think it's a season now you might capitalise where Liverpool are in a bit of a dip. Chelsea, a kind of Potter's gone in there, similar like Arteta, and being left with a squad now he's got to sort out. Hopefully he'll be given the time to do it, because I'd like him to succeed. But we know with Chelsea, you just don't know. Arteta was given that time, and we're going in the right direction. I think if you can finish above Man City, you'll win the league. But I'll be very disappointed if we don't finish in second place, because I think it's a time with Liverpool on a slight dip, and Chelsea the way they are. I think we're the second, team, and we're the ones who'll push Man City along. If you say who else I'd like to play with, I'd like to play under an Arsene Wenger at Arsenal. Mm-hmm. I'd like to play under Klopp at Liverpool, and I'd like to play the way he plays Guardiola at Man City, because his style would suit my way greatly.
Brilliant. Thank you. Another question. Here we go. Let's get through as many of these as we can. Behind the Bet with sportsbet.io with David O'Leary. Sharif Chinina, who was the best manager you played under at Arsenal? Was it Terry Neal, Don Howe, or George Graham?
George Graham.
No hesitation.
No, they were all good people, because they wouldn't be at Arsenal Football Club if they wouldn't have had the ability. But George Graham was the best. Bit too cautious, but he
1-0 to the Arsenal.
1-0, he had a good defence. I'd have liked to be able to express myself a bit more with him, but he had a way. He came to the club when it was the right time to come to the club. It needed somebody like himself, and he'd be the best manager that I played under, without a doubt.
What is the reason why he stands out? Because you obviously, with a career at Arsenal, you've had a number of managers at Arsenal, and as you said, they're all good to play at Arsenal, even starting with a great Bertie Mee. But what was it about George Graham that just...
Coaching ability, but his way of being able to manage the club off the field as well. He had the ability of both. He could coach, and then he could run the football club on the other side as well, and that way. So he had a great ability that way.
And of course, it was George Graham coming to Leeds as manager, took you as assistant manager. So you
You know what? You know, on that, I was never close to George. When I played that last game, you said against Sheffield Wednesday, I remember saying, "Thank you very much," and bye-bye. And that was the last time I'd seen him. I went on, and I remember a few years later, and this is a true story, I was going upstairs to have a shower. I'd come in from a run, and my daughter Kira at the time was at home from school, and I said, "Kira, any calls come in, I want you to be my secretary." "Oh yes, Daddy, I'll do that for you." And it came downstairs afterwards about 11 o'clock, and I said, my secretary, Hanny called. She said, "Yes, Daddy, George Graham rang." I went, you sure?" I told him you couldn't take any calls. So I said, "What did he want?" And that way. And he said, "He'll ring back this evening." So, during the day, I thought, what does George Graham want me for after this time? He rang back about 6:30 in the evening. Said, "David, George, how are you? This, that, and the other. How are you keeping?" "Fine." "What you think? What's George want?" He said, "David, I'm going to be the Leeds United manager. I'd like you to come as my number 2. I went. I said, "George, you've shocked me on this. But you'd have to give me time. Could I think about it till the form?" "Yeah, I'll ring you back in the morning." And that's how it happened.
Completely out of the blue?
Out of the blue. Got to know George after that. He was a hard taskmaster. I mean, I came up, I really enjoyed working for him. He was great to work for. I learned so much. I made so many mistakes, but he was so patient to point things out. But you could be a number 2 for 20 years, but when you're given that number 1 job, it's completely different. It doesn't prepare you for the number 1 job because the buck stops with you.
Yeah.
But he was a great person to learn for over the years, without a doubt.
Did you ever ask him and go, "Why did you pick me?" Because you said that you weren't necessarily close, so it wasn't like...
Oh, yeah. He was very close to a person that used to be his assistant, Stuart Houston.
Yeah.
And I thought he'd have picked it. But no, he just said, he used to say to me, towards the end of my career, "You should stay in football. You tactically you're good. You know about football." He'd picked me brains over the last few years at Arsenal on things, and so that was my only kind of conclusion with it. And he was brilliant, but my first year with him, I mean, he was so hard taskmaster. I thought, I'm not going to survive this, and that way. But it was all the learning process with him.
And when you eventually did become the manager of Leeds United, and the way that they played, you brought young players in. I mean, the quality of players that you brought in, you had the likes of Paul Robinson, you had Ian Hart, you had Harry Kewell, you had Alan Smith. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. Who influenced you in the style of play for Leeds, known as an attack-minded team? Was that from anybody, or was that just the way that you wanted your team to play and you did it your own way?
I had, over the few years with George, I'd be kind of saying to him, we should, go for it a bit more. But George was more cautious. His record spoke for itself. And I always thought to myself, if I ever get a chance in football and I get a chance to coach a team or manage a team, I'm going to play on the kind of the front foot. And I've seen over the time these young kids developing with Leeds, and I was pushing them along with George. But George being the coach said, "They're young, we've got to give them a chance." So when I did get the job, I thought to myself, I'd been going and nagging George for a long time. I've got to, go with my own instincts and put, these players in and see what happens. And that's what I did. And I felt they were like my own, that they could cope with it. They wouldn't be in awe of the grounds you'd go to. They'd go and enjoy it and try and express themselves. So I thought, let's give it a go. We had Jonathan Woodgate.
Yeah.
You'd Kewell, you'd Alan Smith, you'd people like Stephen McPhail. And we went with it. The Leeds fans got round us, and I wanted us to play. I had the philosophy of, when the other team had the ball, we were like ants around them to get it back, pressurised them. And then when we got the ball back, go and express yourself. And I worked on that in training with them, that I always felt, I thought I was a good player myself, but one thing when I got the ball, even though I thought I was a really top player, I always needed time. And if I was given time, I could hurt people. But if you wasn't given time, I hated that to happen. And I believe that was what you had to do. And I'd say to him, when we win the ball back quickly, I want you to go and express yourself and try and score a goal. And that was our philosophy we worked on. That was our success in Europe, where teams in Europe, in general on the continent, they get the ball, they're allowed to play from the back into midfield and everything else. We were at them straight away. They couldn't do that. And that really disrupted a lot of European teams. And that was a great deal of our success, particularly in Europe and in England.
Brilliant. Right, so we're going to rattle through as many as we can. We've got about another probably 5-6 minutes of questions. Here we go. Question from Tim. What do you think are the strengths and weaknesses of England for the World Cup?
Well, first of all, I like Gareth Southgate greatly. I hope he brings the trophy home. Strengths, I think they got people who can score goals. That's their strengths in that way. I think Harry Kane, if he's hot in the tournament, he's a match winner, can win you. I think Phil Foden is a fantastic player. I think Saka on the other side can hurt you as well. I think Bellingham in midfield, getting forward, if he's released. You know, the age of him, he can be, you know, he can go on to be a very, very top class player. I think Declan Rice, the holding player there for him, hopefully. So I think England, I hope they play on the front foot, because that's where their strength will be too. They can hurt people by scoring goals.
Just quickly, how far will England get in the World Cup, in your opinion?
I hope they go a long way. I hope they get to I think they can achieve the semi-finals. People might say, if you're saying who I think will win it, and I'm sorry to be boring in that, but I look at Brazil and I see the players they have, and again up front you see the players that, you know, players that can do one-off magical things. I think Brazil are stacked up, good goalkeepers, good defenders, good midfield players. I think they've got a great balance to their side. So I'd love to tell you somebody else, people out there, and sorry to be boring, but I think Brazil are the team I think there's a few South American teams, Uruguay and Argentina, but they be the ones. France are the ones that, sorry to go further out, France are the ones that fascinate me. You know, we know who they have up front to score goals. But I just don't know, are they going to turn up like Euros a couple of years ago and be this arrogant and self-destructive unit, or are they going to come out and be a team? So they can blow hot and cold, and I don't know what France will be on this tournament.
Sometimes the toughest opponents for France are France.
Yes,
effectively. Yeah, okay. Another question, thank you, for David O'Leary, behind the bet at sportsbet.io. Question from Black Dog. Would you like to manage a national team?
Yes, I probably would. It'd be interesting. Yeah, I'd probably say yes.
Have you ever had the opportunity to manage a national team?
I was approached for the Irish job, but I didn't think the time was right in that way. So that's in that way. I had.
Was that recently? Or was
no, years and years ago. That's the nearest I got, and that was I got felt out for a few other jobs, but the impression I got, I thought half the world was getting felt out for, but that one was an actual approach to see, and I didn't think it was the time for me. Okay. But would I like to do it, as I say? I'd like to have a go at a national job. I'd love to be in this World Cup, without a doubt.
Brilliant. Right, let's get through as many of these as we possibly can. Thank you for the last question. Question for Wikinga123. How did you feel when Mr. Charlton left you out of the Republic of Ireland squad? So the quick story on this one is that Jack Charlton called you up and wanted you to play part of a mini tournament. Is it Iceland or the Czech Republic?
Yes. Yeah.
But you had a holiday booked?
No, the gist of that was, look, Jack was out of order, but that was up to him. Did I ever think he'd pick me again to ever play? No. It suited Arsenal because the period he left me out for about 3 years. I probably missed about 40 to 50, 40, say, internationals. Probably had my best period at Arsenal, so it suited Arsenal not for me to getting picked, really. Jack picked the squad, and he left me out because about 2 weeks before we were playing in the cup final, I pulled out a niggly injury against Uruguay in a friendly, didn't play in it, and then they played in it, and I played in the cup final, and Jack announced this trip to Iceland, and he didn't pick me in it, and I was going to my sister's wedding. It wasn't a holiday when he picked me, and loads of people withdrew because the bottom line is they seen that Iceland middle of, early June, thinking thank you very much indeed. All that. All of a sudden, I took a call the day before my sister's wedding, and said, "Oh yeah, we're picking you now." And I said, "I'm sorry." So simple as that. That's the true story.
Can I just scoot ahead because we're running out of time, and I've not even spoke about Anfield for the World.
Great night.
But I also just want to talk about that penalty against Romania for the 1990 World Cup.
I know you're rushing. Then what had happened?
In fact, it's a question from Viv. Actually, the penalty in shootouts against Romania in 1990 World Cup has been voted as the greatest moment in Irish footballing history.
I'm living on it still. I mean, my mum. When the TV see me walking out, my mum told me that my dad got off the couch, start kneeling down and start praying. And when I scored it, my dad looked back at her and said, "Margaret, thank God David scored, because we'd had to move out of the country." I'm still, people are buying me drinks, people are congratulating me, people are coming up to me. Probably the weirdest one I've had is a few years back in Dublin in a lovely pub. I was enjoying with a few friends, and this young kid jumped out in front of me and said, "David O'Leary, I want to buy you a pint of Guinness because I was conceived after your penalty." So that was the most embarrassing one I've had. But I've been around the world. People have said to me, I was there. It was like a kind of a JFK moment. The penalty, the game finished. We had a set of lads going to take penalties. I could have easily been taking the first one, to taking the fourth one, to the third, but everybody chose one. I was left with the fifth one. It didn't bother me. And
were you always were you designated as the fifth penalty taker?
No, not designated. The game ended, and it was a group of us, and I went and asked from Andy Townsend to Ray Houghton, to Kevin Sheedy. They all said, "Can we have this? Can we?" And after they'd all picked, the fifth one was the one left there. Going up for the fifth penalty, there's about 30,000 Irishmen behind the goal who'd been going mad for hours and hours before the game, through the game, and there was a stillness there. And I was walking up, and I was thinking to myself, "Don't mess this up now. This is your chance. All the other lads have done the business," and I was kind of thinking, "Don't put more pressure on yourself that way." Got the ball, there was stillness behind. Referee maybe put it down again. Placed it.
Yes, you placed it down more than
once.
He was
very
wasn't
finicky.
It? Yes.
Yeah, he was very finicky where it was. And I always said I was going to put it to the goalkeeper's left. I did. He dived the other way.
He did.
And then there was this eruption behind the goal. Mental.
The gentleman who missed the penalty for Romania, do you know his name? The gentleman who missed the penalty for Romania?
Timofsky was the goalkeeper, wasn't he?
No, it was Silviu Lung was the goalkeeper. Timofte was the guy who missed the penalty. So Daniel Timofte missed the penalty. When he retired, he opened up bars in Romania, and his first ever bar was called Penalty. Genuine fact.
I'll tell you a story. My young kids, my wife was in London, and she stepped out and into the garden in North London. Not that she'd be thinking I'd be taking a penalty, but thinking that couldn't go through watching this. And my son stayed in. He was 7 at the time, and he ran out and said, "Daddy scored." And she tells us, she grabbed him and said, "Don't be so stupid," and dragged him back in. And it was kept being reeled around, my penalty, and that way. And it was embarrassing time. I remember coming back to Ireland and then going back out to Italy, and I got on this Air League's plane, and everybody stood up when I got on board, and then the pilot said, "David O'Leary's on board," and it was just bad. And I can honestly say I've been in Hong Kong with my wife, and I was sitting down for a meal, and this is across the world thing, and people have sent over where, as an Irish couple living in Hong Kong, I was certain place watching your penalty, could I buy but and that's happened. People, a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, everywhere. It's just been that.
I love it. Time is the enemy on this one. We are shooting through. So very quickly, I know we've got a question about Liverpool and winning at Liverpool. If that can flash up, if we've got it, because it's the one thing that we've not really spoke about, and I've got like 12 minutes left, and there's still a few things we need to do. So we'll flash the question, but can you just tell us about that night at Liverpool?
Liverpool. an amazing night, an amazing through a tragedy that the game ended up as the league has won over 38 games. Winning the FA Cup final is a day and it's amazing. But the league is about the best team, and Anfield was like a shootout of, it was a cup final night. We didn't go up the night before. George Graham wanted to travel up on the day. He didn't. We got up there, had lunch, went to our rooms, came down to team meeting. George said, everybody's saying you've got to go and score a quick goal. We don't have to do that. What we do is got to score 2 clear goals. We got to keep a clean sheet. Keep a clean sheet is important because it will always be in the game. And he had this thing, I thought we could beat Liverpool, but if you ask me, did I think we'd be coming home with the trophy, winning by 2 clear goals?
Not just that, but the way you did it.
I didn't think we could. Came in at half time, and George Graham said, well done. We kept a clean sheet. We could still do this. And we went out second half, got a goal. You could feel the tension.
You got a great view of the first goal, by the way, because you were stood right on the edge of the 18-yard box, weren't you?
Yeah. We got that first goal, and then you could feel the tension. You could see it on the Liverpool lads. They were played a very cautious game in many ways. Yes, they attacked us, but they felt be cautious. As long as we don't get beat by 2 clear goals, you know, we're champions here. And the game went on, and then we seen what at the very end what happened. You know, John Barnes could have run it into the touch line or out for a throw in, but he stole off and gave back to John Lukic. John Lukic threw it to Lee Dixon. I'm looking straight down the pitch. You know, Lee Dixon knocks this ball through. It's flicked on by Alan Smith. Michael Thomas is running through. I'm looking straight down the pitch here, 1-on-1. I was going, can't believe, is this going to happen? Is this going to happen? Michael Thomas flicks it over. The goalkeeper. The ball takes seemingly ages to get into the net. You're thinking somebody's going to get back and scoop it away or that. It goes in. It's unbelievable. It's the most unbelievable football moment that I had. To win the league, I've been waiting for so many years at Arsenal to do it, to play against one of the top sides, to do it against, and to do it in the manner we did was just unique.
Lee Dixon said that he burst into tears, and when they kicked off Liverpool, he couldn't see because he had tears in his eyes. Oh. Can you just?
I was crying afterwards. It was just an amazing time. And I had my brother and my dad behind that goal, and they were saying that when Michael Thomas got through and when they flicked, they thought the ball would never cross the line, never and never. And they just couldn't believe it. I mean, I think the viewing audiences was amazing.
Yeah, millions.
I joined up with the Irish team the following day. We had an international then to play on the Sunday. The lads were telling me all the boys were watching the game that night, and Kevin Sheedy, Everton player, jumped up like he thought he was the biggest supporter of Arsenal that night. But we joined up with the Liverpool lads that following evening, and you could see how disappointed they were of, you know,
what did he say to them?
Couldn't say much. We weren't sorry that we beat them, if you know what I mean. But you could see how gutted they were.
Thank you. Sharaf was the question, by the way. Sharaf, you won a free bet. Right, thank you. Let's move on to David's picks then. We've got a proper race on against the clock now. So this is where we asked you, before you came in the studio today, we asked you 3 questions, which you've answered. And anybody who's got 2 out of 3 right, minimum of 2 out of 3 right, has won a 10 USDT free bet. They'll be credited into your account within 48 hours. So question number 1 that we asked you beforehand, this is a memory game for you as well, because we've had people who've given us they've changed their answers in between answering them previously and then live in the studio. So, what was David's best moment in an Arsenal shirt? Was it winning the FA Cup in 79, joining Arsenal in 73, beating Liverpool 2-0, or holding the record for the most appearances for Arsenal? And the answer is
winning at Anfield.
Winning at Anfield. Yeah, it couldn't. Given the story that you've just said, it couldn't be anything else. So that's 1 out of 3. Well done if you got that correct. Question number 2. Favourite teammate to spend time with off the field? Lee Dixon, Pat Jennings, Tony Woodcock, or Pat Rice. Now, there's 2 answers for this one, and they are...
I spent a lot of time with Pat Jennings and Pat Rice.
That's right. So you were only friends with people called Pat, is my understanding.
I had a great bunch of teammates, but my wife seemed to get on with them. They were older and wiser and that, but they were the lads I kind of went out for dinner with, mixed with.
So the answer is Pat Jennings and Pat Rice. And you've actually already answered the third question in this one, which is who does David think is going to win the World Cup? England, Brazil, Argentina or France? And you've gone for... Brazil. There we are. So if you got at least 2 out of 3 correct, you've won yourself a 10 USDT free bet. Of course, you've got 3 out of 3 correct. You've also won a 10 USDT free bet, and that will be credited in your account within 48 hours. So well done to everybody who got it right. And now it is time for Behind the Cause. So this is where we've offered, sportsbet.io have offered €500 donation to a charity of your choice, which you've chosen to be St Gemma's Hospice, which is right here in West Yorkshire in Leeds, which provides the best possible care to people in West Yorkshire with cancer and other life-limiting illnesses. So obviously something very close to your heart, and that's where the donation is going.
I think it's just unbelievable work, don't they?
It really is. It really is. So 500. So I'm going to... Got a bit of a quiz for you. I'm going to ask you 10 questions that are about you or about football in general. And for every question you get right, we'll up the €500 donation by €50.
Oh, easy questions, please.
So we're going to double. The €500 is safe, but
Great.
we're going to potentially double it.
Great.
So are you... Some of these questions are easy. Some of them might test you.
Okay.
You ready? Question number 1. You've already answered this one, so you'll get this one right. If you get this one wrong, then I'm having words. You made your Arsenal debut against which team?
Burnley.
€50. What was the score? That's question number 2.
Oh, good God. 2-1?
Complete opposite. It was 0-0.
0-0.
0-0. You kept a clean sheet on your debut.
I'm going to make
that's
sure.
That's why you...
You know what? I've all the time, I've never been asked that one. It's a good question.
Thank you very much. You beat Sheffield United 2-1, by the way, in your following game. Maybe that's why you stayed in, because you kept a clean sheet at Burnley. Because obviously Arsenal always known to struggle at Burnley.
For all the nowhere I've made my debut, what was the score?
0-0.
0-0.
No, you know.
Right, let's come on and make some more money here.
Right, okay, question number 3. Your full name is David Anthony O'Leary. How many A's are there in your full name?
In my full name?
Yeah, how many A's?
In my full name? 2.
Oh, David. There's one in David.
Yeah.
There's
Anthony,
one in Anthony, and there's one in Leary.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about my thing. Could give us 3. Go on. The charity's good.
I'm going to do that. I'm going to give you that. So you got €100 extra on top.
I'm watching Coldplay here as well, so it's brilliant.
Oh, yeah, on TV. Okay. In the 1993 FA Cup final and FA Cup final replay, you came on as a sub in both games, replacing the same player. Who was that player that you replaced? I guess no one's asked you that either.
Nobody's asked me that at all. And it was the same player.
Same player.
On the both
So
occasions.
you came on the final and the final replay, and he
Ray
came
Parlour?
on. No. Do you want another? He played up front, and he was a very good striker.
Up front. Alan Smith didn't come off, did he?
No, he didn't. Starts with I. And
Not Ian Wright.
Ian Wright.
In both games.
In both games.
How could George take Ian Wright off? He was a match winner for us.
He brought you on, and they didn't lose, did they?
Oh, God.
Hey.
Righty.
I'm going to give you that, by the way, because this is all going to charity. It's €150 on top. Right, how many managers, question number 5, how many managers, you had 5 managers at Arsenal in your time there. Can you name 3 of them?
Bertie Mee.
Yeah.
Don Howe.
Yep.
Terry Neal.
Do you remember the others, just for the sake of it?
If you want to go technically, Bobby Campbell for a little bit.
Steve Burton-Shaw as well was the
Burton-Shaw
manager. Yeah.
There.
Yeah, George Graham as well.
George Graham.
There you go, €200 on top of. Against question number 6. Against which nation did you score your last goal for the Republic of Ireland against? And pretty much your only goal from open play. 5-0 win.
Turkey.
Is the right answer. So that's €250.
I was deadly about 2 yards out. That was
lethal.
Deadly from there.
Absolutely lethal. Question 7. You made over 700 appearances for Arsenal. 3 other players for the Gunners have made over 600 appearances. Can you name 2 of them?
George Armstrong won.
621.
And there's another one there.
There's another 2.
Another 2 there.
Yeah.
Made 600.
One of them played 619, the other one played 669.
Pat Riceby won.
Both defenders. You played alongside both.
Tony Adams, definitely.
Yep. And the other one, you've got the extra €300 now on top of. That's an extra €50. But the other one, he's already been mentioned in this chat. Played alongside you at Anfield on that night. In fact, he kind of led to the goal.
With Lee Dixon played.
Lee Dixon, yeah.
Did Lee Dixon over 600 games for Arsenal?
Yeah. 619 appearances for Arsenal.
Do you know what?
One man. Interesting fact about Lee Dixon: 619 games for Arsenal. One man in the match on his debut. Never won it again.
Do you know Lee? I remember Lee coming. He settled in straight away. You thought he'd been there all his life. Great player for Arsenal. Settled in brilliantly. I really didn't think he accumulated that amount of games.
Yeah, literally. He's up there.
Yeah.
Question number 8 to raise money for Behind the Cause. This is going to St Gemma's Hospice here in Leeds. Which team has more points in the current Premier League table right now? Leeds United or Aston Villa?
Leeds United, I hope.
It's Aston Villa.
Aston Villa?
Yeah.
Many.
They've got 18 points. Leeds United have got 15. So he's sticking at 300. Right, 2 more questions to go. This one's going to test you. You ready?
Yeah, go on.
In total, there have been 11 Davids or Daves that have managed in the Premier League. Name 4 of them.
In the Premier League, David Moyes is one.
Yeah.
We got 3 more.
Yeah.
Davids. In the Premier League.
David or Daves?
Dave. It was this lad that's Dave.
So I will count temporary managers as well.
Temporary manager.
Yeah.
But there's a Dave, what's one in Southampton?
Yes.
Dave, what's his name? Give me a start of his initial.
J.
Dave. Oh, jeez. Name is gone. I'm fuzzed up.
Okay. Dave Jones, is that the one you're
David
thinking
Jones,
of?
but David Jones.
The other one,
Dave Besant.
No, he didn't
No,
manage.
didn't.
No, there's a guy who managed. He's known for managing Watford, Wimbledon. He was in charge of Forest, Sheffield United, and Leicester. Known for Route 1 football.
Route 1 football.
Yeah, Dave, and then he's kind of sweets. Think of a sweet manufacturer, all sorts.
Dave.
I'm gonna have to tell you this.
Go on, tell me.
Dave Bassett.
I said Dave. Oh, Besant. I said I thought
You said
Dave
Bassett.
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 Oh, Dave Besant. I said Dave Bassett. Few.
And there's also another one who used to be manager of Spurs. And also in charge of, formerly of Sheffield Wednesday as well.
Dave.
Surname starts with P.
Oh, David Plea.
David Plea.
I can't believe
There you are, you
Dave
see?
Bassett was the one that said Dave Besant.
Yeah.
You know why? I got confused.
It's the
On
pressure.
Friday, no, it's the pressure. But I haven't seen, you've seen on people for years and years. On Friday in London, I was in London, and I seen 2 people, Dave Besant and Dave Bassett, together, the 2 of them. I was thinking, I actually seen them on Friday.
The other one is David Wagner, who was in charge of Huddersfield Town when they were in the Premier League.
They were, yeah.
The other ones were David Webb, temporary boss of Chelsea. Dave
for how long? David Webb?
Yeah, for about 11 games. Dave Merrington, who had a full season in charge of Southampton.
Yeah.
David Watson for Everton. David Unsworth for Everton, both temporary managers. And Dave Kerslake in charge of Cardiff, temporary when they were in the Premier League as well. So there you go.
Where did you pull them out of?
You know, where the show goes, nobody knows, as we say. Question number 10, by the way. You're up to 350, so this could get up to 400. We're over time, I don't care. Against which team did you score your last league goal for Arsenal? 722 appearances, you scored 11 goals for the Gunners. Your last, the team you scored your last goal for Arsenal. You scored after 3 minutes, 23rd of Feb 1991. They won 4-0, you scored the first. Paul Merson, Alan Smith, and Campbell scored. Kevin Campbell.
Was it a home? Home or away?
Home. Against another London side.
It's another London side.
So just go through London sides.
Yeah, it was done. I never scored against Tottenham.
No.
Chelsea.
Think of South London.
Called Crystal Palace.
That's the one, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There you
Crystal
are.
Palace.
So by my rating, you've added €400 on.
Brilliant. So that's 900 quid.
€900. Yeah.
Well done. Thank you.
So well done.
Thank you for the desk.
No, thank you. We're over time, but I've got so much more I could talk to you about. I really could. Mate, I just want to say thank you.
Look, it's a pleasure. You said to me before this, an hour might seem long, it hasn't. And it was a pleasure. I could have done it longer.
Well, let's keep going.
If sometime you want to take pity on me, I'm more than willing to come back. But I've really enjoyed that. Thank you,
mate. I really thank you. Thank you for coming in and seeing us at Clubhouse TV, sportsbet.io. I wish you well. And where are you going to be watching the World Cup from? Is it just at home or?
Mainly at home, in Ireland a bit, but home feed up, and hopefully it'll be a good World Cup. Hopefully
so. Mate, thank you for your time. I very much appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching as well, the Behind the Bet with Clubhouse TV. We're going to have more special guests on Behind the Bet, so I'll just say this again. Keep watching Clubhouse TV for the latest information, and keep visiting the pages of the Clubhouse and the Behind the Bet section. But from myself and from David O'Leary,
thank you.
Until next time, it's goodbye.